We're going to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. We wrote a story last year about backlash to the Me Too movement on Wall Street and how men were icing, or some men, not all men, are icing women out of fear either that their behavior is going to be misinterpreted or that a woman might launch a false claim against them. And so with this context and literally the careers of future Wall Street women hanging in the balance, I want to just poll the audience really quickly. So everyone take out your phones. Let's go to the Bloomberg Equality.app site. And the question is, are fears of accusations of misconduct just a smokescreen for financial executives to avoid doing the real work of creating a level playing field? The answers you can pick from are: 1, absolutely. There are very few false accusations, and this is about protecting the status quo. 2, not so fast. Men should do the work, but all it takes is one false accusation to ruin a career. Or 3, no, there are ways to be an ally that don't require men to put themselves at risk. All right. Wow. Interesting. Whoa. Oh, there's this guy. Oh, look at that. Wow, okay. Whoa, oh, whoa. Okay. All right, so while you guys are doing this, let's get started. There's a lot to unpack. And this is especially a loaded idea because statistically, women are at a greater risk of being sexually assaulted or sexually harassed than a man is of being falsely accused. But to really kick this off, I really want to go to Fatima, who's an expert in this, and I really want you to kind of shed some light on this. Is this a correct paranoia or a smokescreen?
So this is an outsized response. I'm sort of fascinated by it. For sure, the numbers of false reports of harassment and violence are low, but this suggests that people think that they are much higher than they are. People are no more likely to report falsely incidents of harassment and violence than they are other sorts of crimes. Studies have shown anywhere from 4 to 9%. But I actually think what this shows is that the narrative of false reports, the narrative that Me Too has gone too far, has started to take hold in ways that are both dangerous and don't match the facts.
And can you talk to us a little bit? I mean, this is in the context of Wall Street still hasn't quite had its Me Too movement moment. And you really haven't seen anyone quite get taken down in the public eye that you've seen in other industries. So you'd think that women aren't actually even coming forward, let alone in droves in falsehood, right?
So,
Could you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, the issue of harassment and violence is dramatically underreported. Most people don't tell anyone that they are experiencing harassment and violence, let alone use any sort of internal system or tell the press, right? That is not a thing that happens very often. But at the same time, the reasons that they are not reporting are very legitimate. It's because when you do report, you're likely to experience retaliation, and that retaliation is sometimes formal. You may lose your job, you may not get that promotion, you may not get that raise, or it is informal, right? The icing out of entire industries. So with very real reason, people aren't reporting, or people don't report because they think nothing important will happen. And there has been a long history of us doing that very well, right? People raise very serious concerns and then nothing important happens in terms of a response. What has been different about the last year and a half is that you have seen people come forward. You have seen action taken against a handful of very high-profile individuals. That is surprising. But you have also seen a number of companies publicly and internally say, we have a problem and we need to change. That's been the real shift the last year and a half.
And I want to, Jill, you are our Wall Street veteran on the stage here, and I think it's very important because not everybody in this audience works on Wall Street. So relationships are so crucial, right? And you've been on Wall Street in very different eras. You were in the 90s and on the trading floor, Bear Stearns. Now you're on the wealth management side in Evercore. Tell us a little bit about how crucial relationships are for you to do your job, including the mentorship aspect of that.
Well, relationships are crucial to any career. And I've been fortunate over the course of mine to have several mentors. Early on, it was more men because, of course, there were so few women in the industry. And now I actually have lots of female mentors. And that's a function of two things. One is that my firm at Evercore Wealth Management, 50% of our senior professionals are women. And that's one of the reasons that I joined the firm. It's also a statistic that I'm proud of because it shows that we want to give jobs and promotions to the best candidate regardless of their gender. And secondly, because I have chosen to focus on female clients, and many of whom are executives, they're entrepreneurs, and they're philanthropists. And as much as I mentor them in their investments, they've become mentors and friends to me. And Wall Street is a business of trust. It's built on trust. And as these clients have come to trust me with their wealth, they in turn have become sponsors, recommending me to other people and putting their reputations on the line.
So really, if you lose that, and it's such a, given that the majority of people in executive positions on Wall Street are men, and if you lose them as mentors, you don't have enough women in most cases to pull you up and fill that gap.
Right. And in my case, I've been able,
Right.
I have them, I work at a 50-50 firm, which is a joy. And there are plenty of other organizations that are like this, that share the same sense of camaraderie, collegiality, and respect as our firm. But I have also reached outside of my industry for mentors to help me work my way through some of the issues.
Stephen, talk to us about what the long-term risks are to companies if their employees end up icing the next generation of Jills out.
Well, first, it goes directly against any diversity and inclusion plan that they have. They're going to hamper their recruitment. They're going to hamper their retention of women. I do want to say, and probably I'll be a bit provocative in response to your poll, that the surveys that I've read, the Lean In and McKinsey survey, and the anecdotal evidence I get as an employment lawyer is that this is real, that backlash is real. It's people subscribing to the Mike Pence rule, but it's not just dinners, it's travel, it's being in a car, being in an airplane, staying at the same hotel as a woman. But that is almost minor compared with the major risk that's occurring, and that's men who are withdrawing from being sponsors or mentors or supporting women so that they can get further in their careers. If you've ever met anyone who said that they were self-made, I will tell you that they are lying to themselves, that every single person has had help along the way.
And what about in terms of you could be solving, talk about discrimination versus the short-term problem of, she might think I'm sexually harassing her versus the long-term problem for a company that, I get a discrimination lawsuit.
Right. So here's what's going on in some men's minds, not everybody's. They worry about the uncertainty, the lack of control, and the possibility that their company's going to abandon them. And then they see this reinforced. I don't know how many of you read an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal on Friday by Alan Dershowitz, Harvard professor emeritus. I want to be investigated by the FBI was the title of that article because allegedly he had sex with an underage woman and he then was considered part of the rape culture. When I started reading the article, I said, this is probably tongue-in-cheek. He doesn't really want to be investigated. By the time I finished the article, he wants to be investigated by the FBI. He feels that somehow the FBI is the ultimate authority, and the FBI only can clear him because reporters are still saying that the allegations against him are unresolved. When men read these articles, it's it's not as, it is about false claims, but it's not also. They really don't get it. They really don't understand how women perceive sexual harassment. They get predator sexual harassment. They get Harvey Weinstein. They even get taunting behavior to an extent. But I've done my own informal surveys. If you ask a woman, or not ask, if you compliment a woman who has just gotten a new outfit or a new haircut in the office, is that harassing behavior? Most women I've asked have said it's context, it's tone, it's manner, and it's if we think you're creepy to begin with. So it's not yes or no, and most men don't know how to handle that. You know, and then you go beyond the taunting behavior to the patronizing behavior, which is part of harassment. Condescending, dismissive, disrespectful. I could give you 6 different examples of how that occurs. Let me ask you, those of you who, like me, over the years have been huggers. You like to embrace someone when you haven't seen them for a while, okay? I don't do that anymore. Unless the woman comes with her arms outstretched for a hug, I do not reach in for a hug, and I certainly do not slobber her with a kiss on her cheek. She doesn't want that. I don't lean over a woman at her desk anymore because she wants personal space. I may not need that personal space, but I've learned that she wants that.
All right, so let's just jump in right
Okay.
here. What? These are all really important things that a lot of companies do not cover in an HR session. And jump in, like, what should companies be doing in light of this is the reality of the world that we live in?
Well, I actually think part of what you're saying, even though my hair is standing up more than it is part of what you're saying is we need a resetting of cultural norms within our organizations, and that because culture has been moving really rapidly, right? And because of that, people are not sure where the lines are. So when I think about the sorts of things that companies can proactively be doing, is talking in concrete ways about culture. And there was a really great set of videos that we got to partner with at the National Women's Law Center called That's Harassment. And they have a series of videos that show a number of situations that, some of them you leave creeped out, but they're based on actual real facts. So having the sorts of harassment training that is about culture with examples is a helpful thing if it's well done. These are well done videos. The second thing, if I could just say, to take us back to Dershowitz and others who are trying to put out a narrative that, investigate me by the FBI. What they are really saying is, because of course the FBI doesn't just investigate random acts, that's not even under their jurisdiction, right? But what they are really saying is we assume that these people are liars, that the women who have come forward and who have told their experiences are liars. It used to be enough to just say that.
Yeah.
Now it's not. Now the expectation is that your organization, that your educational institution, that whoever you are going to take it seriously and respond accordingly, which might be conducting a real investigation, which might mean looking into it, and it might actually mean consequences for someone even as famous as Alan Dershowitz. That's a shift.
Right. And what are you advising clients? I mean, you have companies as clients, you have people as clients, that they should be doing to avoid having backlash in their company?
They have to take it by the shoulders and they have to shake it. They have to set up. I chair the Men's Alliance for the Financial Women's Association in New York City. They have to set up internal men's alliances. They have to pull together the right men for the right reasons. It's been said before that it's got to come from the CEO. It's got to come from the senior leadership. They have to model it. They have to be vocal about it. They have to be convinced themselves that it's the right thing to do to sponsor and to mentor women. You're going to lose a generation of women who want to move up in your company if you don't act right now. So what's a men's alliance? A men's alliance is getting the men to, and probably with a facilitator, and with respect to all the HR people who I've dealt with over many years, right now your PR isn't really good. Fortune ran a magazine article, don't trust HR, HR is not your friend. You've got plaintiffs' lawyers going on national television saying the same thing. And so you have women that are afraid, you have men that are afraid. You probably need to pull in a team of outside facilities, at least to get traction, at least to get the program going. You have to convince the men that it's in their self-interest. You do it with positive reinforcement, you do it with negative reinforcement. There are some companies, law firms now, that are saying to their leadership, if we don't see some improvement in the women that are being promoted from your pool, from your ranks, you're going to lose your leadership position. Your incentive bonus is going to be affected. Your performance review is going to be affected. It's going to have ramifications. What is wrong right now is that Mike Pence came out with what he said, and all of a sudden people said, well, that's acceptable. The vice president said it must be reasonable. It must be normative. It's not. It's none of those things. So when companies address this, they have to make the men accountable to each other. They have to have reporting that goes on, and it's not a once-and-done training. I don't believe in once-and-done training. This is a continuous program that goes on until the problem is eradicated.
I also want to talk about this idea that these types of aggressions on Wall Street are like considered microaggressions, and for a lot of women that I've spoken to who survived, I call it survived, who survived Wall Street in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, before HR kind of became like sterilized the field. A lot of these microaggressions are kind of like not coming even up on their radar. And so for the millennial generation, they might not necessarily be able to commiserate or have somebody to talk to. So do you believe that, Jill, can you just jump in here and kind of talk about that? Do you think that's something that senior women on Wall Street should be more aware of?
You know, I've been thinking about that, and that's just not the case at Evercore, because we have much more of a family type feel. And there are other firms, other organizations similar to ours who have that congeniality, which I spoke of earlier. But our sense is, you know, my background in the brokerage business tells me that I suspect there's probably issues still in that part of the business, in some, but not all. But my message to young women is, you don't have to put up with sexism, whether it's blatant or micro or death by 1,000 paper cuts, because there are firms like mine out there where the tide has really turned. That's the hope.
And what about in terms of like at what point, and I want all of us to talk about this, at what point is it important for a woman to kind of go on record and say, enough, this isn't okay anymore? Because I think oftentimes once the press hears about it, it's already like too late. They've already lost their job, or something has happened that they need external attention on it. And so, you know, at what point is it where you could still turn the ship around without tanking your career?
Well, the genesis of the Me Too movement is really to protect victims from having to work in unsafe or unhealthy environments. But the downstream effect is that it helps others. And we need to protect and we need to support those people that do that. Women aren't obligated to report bad behavior, but when they do, they can help a young woman. Awareness is the first step to change, right? It's the first step to a solution to a problem. And if you take Anita Hill, a woman before her time, think about all the change that she inspired. And it's far be it from me to prescribe anyone to tell them what to do. But when a woman can tell her story, when a woman can share her experience, she is doing a great service to others.
You know, some of it depends whether your company has created a climate where you can come forward in a way that is early and not experience rapid and fast retaliation. So some places have created climates that encourage that sort of early reporting. But oftentimes the people we hear from through the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, they tried to use their systems. It did not work. They experienced retaliation, and a message was sent to them and everyone else that it's hard to come forward. And so it is a very individual decision. The one thing that I feel very strongly about is that the individual needs to drive it. And for low-income women in particular, the choice that you are making around safety and your ability to support your family is a very real one. And so the factors that people are taking into account are often, will I have a job or not?
Right.
So what companies can do is create the conditions that make it easier for people to come forward early.
Without having to be in a position of privilege, which is
Right.
essentially where it's relegated now.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Fatima. The women that have come into my office and that I've interviewed and tell horrible stories are afraid. They're afraid of bringing a legal action. They're afraid even of complaining, what the retaliation will be, what the stigma will be. Very often, all I can say to them is, you were not to blame at all about what happened to you. And then they volunteer that, I would be the second or the third person, but not the first, to complain. What Fatima is saying, and what I agree with, is you have to make it safe for the women to raise these issues without recourse, retaliation. When it comes to the backlash, you also have to make it safe for the men to raise what their issues are and why they are engaging in this withdrawal behavior. You have to start, if you want to leave with one word bite, discuss the undiscussable. Right now, it's not being discussed. I'm doing sexual harassment trainings out there. No company is asking me to teach about anything on backlash.
So I'll let you all take that with you, that we need to be discussing these topics, and it's really been interesting. I think a lot of it's on some people's mind, but it kind of goes back to like this is more so a long-term problem with it that could fester over a long period of time, and you don't see the fallout until many years from now, as opposed to right away. A lot of women don't even know that they're being left out because it's kind of hard to prove a negative. So it's something that we need to draw attention to. So I really thank you all for being here today, and all of you for listening, and have a great rest of your day.